Liberian voters anxiously await the voting tally from Tuesday's presidential election. Why did a Zambian woman quit her medical career to start a tomato farm? And the one-person household trend arouses South Korean concerns. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. The Kenyan Parliament passed a controversial amendment to its election laws on Wednesday, explaining that in the future, if a candidate withdraws from a repeat presidential election, the other candidate would automatically win. This amendment is being heavily criticized by the opposition, whose legislatures boycotted the vote after its leader Raila Odinga Tuesday withdrew from a rerun election scheduled for October the 26th. Meanwhile, Kenya's High Court is allowing the inclusion of Third Way Alliance Party presidential candidate Ekuru Aukot in the election. Earlier, I spoke by phone with constitutional lawyer Steve Ogola to get insight into what the new court ruling means.
So I think the judge is correct in declaring that Ekuru Aukot had a right to be included in the next election. The legal lacuna is this. By the time the judgment has been delivered today, Raila Odinga had withdrawn from the presidential race. And at the time Raila was withdrawing from the presidential race, legally there were only two candidates, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. And the Supreme Court already pronounced itself, saying that where you have only two presidential candidates cleared to run, and one of them withdraws, then the election stands cancelled. The value addition from this judgment, saying that in essence, the election stood cancelled as of yesterday. And therefore, any decision that is made by Judge Mativo today in Ekuru case is futuristic. As to whether Ekuru Aukot can in fact participate in this election will depend on the interpretation that IEBC is now required to seek, either through the Supreme Court under Article 163, Sub-Article 6, or at the High Court under Article 165, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution, which allows IEBC to approach the court and ask the court that we have two conflicting decisions or positions. We have the position by the Supreme Court in Raila Odinga 2013, and we have the position in Regulation 52 of Election General Regulations of 2012 as amended by Parliament in 2017. Regulation 52 says that a candidate nominated to participate in an election can only withdraw from that place within 3 days.
From what you're saying, I get the sense that the onus now is on the IEBC to go back to the Supreme Court to seek clarity on how to interpret those different rulings.
Pragmatic wisdom, according, requires that IEBC now move to court for a harmonization of two conflicting positions of the law. The first position is the Raila Odinga Supreme Court judgment in 2013, which said where you have two candidates, one withdraws, you must cancel the election. That is paragraph 290. Those are not my words. But you also have what Parliament did in 2017. Early this year, Parliament amended Regulation 52, which now reads that a candidate has only a limited opportunity of withdrawing, which is 3 days after nomination. Now, clearly, the withdrawal of Raila Odinga from the race is coming well in advance of well past the 3-day limit time frame for nomination. So I have seen some people arguing that IEBC should be guided by the Regulation 52 of Election General Regulations of 2012 as amended and ignore the Supreme Court judgment. Personally, as a lawyer, I would put preference or preeminence in the Supreme Court decision because that is a specific answer to a specific situation that applies to what we have here.
Would you perhaps see this as a political move where perhaps the courts are trying to avoid a crisis or a delay, looking at how the country has dragged on in this stalemate, and if the IEBC decides to kind of ignore the 2013 ruling and decide to just obey the High Court today, what would be the possible scenario?
If IEBC does not move to court for clarity, because centrality of clarity is very critical. If IEBC fails to move to take that advisory opinion at the Supreme Court or a judicial interpretation at the High Court, then it is open to any Kenyan, including NASA, the main political formation opposition, or even any Kenyan, to move to the High Court under Article 165 Sub-Article 5 of the Constitution of Kenya to ask the High Court to make a quick determination on what it means for Raila to withdraw from elections. Can we say with certainty and evidence that Raila's withdrawal has no consequence in this election, such that IEC should be able to just continue the election when we know that there's a Supreme Court decision which says in 2013 that where there are only two candidates as at the time of withdrawal, then that election stands cancelled.
Well, that was Steve Ogola, a Kenyan constitutional lawyer, speaking to me from Kisumu. We'll have more reporting from Kisumu on Thursday. At West Africa, Liberian election officials are busy counting ballots on Wednesday after Liberians voted on Tuesday in an election expected to mark the first democratic transfer of power in over 70 years. There is no clear frontrunner, but Prince Johnson, a former rebel leader who finished third in the last election in 2011, is among 20 candidates on the ballot. The ex-wife of warlord-turned-President Charles Taylor, now imprisoned in the UK for war crimes committed in Sierra Leone, is a running mate of another favorite, former soccer star George Weah. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has dismissed one of the cases pending before it over President Donald Trump's ban on travel travel from Muslim-majority countries. Now, the original ban is signed by the president, had barred citizens of Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen from entering the United States unless they had a credible claim of a bona fide relationship with a person or entity in the United States. The new restrictions affect citizens of Chad, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen in varying degrees. Now, the revised travel order, which goes into effect on October the 18th, is already being challenged in the lower courts. Now, today, October the 11th, marks the annual United Nations Day of the Girl Child. Its purpose is to highlight the continuing challenges girls face all over the world. One of the biggest is getting an education. VOA's Kevin Enoch looks at one pop-up school in Pakistan that is trying to help.
Every morning, 12-year-old Shagufta Nafis heads off to school. It is a long walk and the location is less than ideal, but Nafis is happy to be here.
My parents could not afford to send me to school. We have a big family and we live in a rented house. That is why my mother got me admitted to the school. I really like studying Urdu and science. In science class, they teach us about various things regarding the world as well as laws. I love science.
It's not an ideal environment, but these teachers say the students are desperate to learn.
All the sound pollution and noise due to traffic is very disturbing. Often the children cannot hear what I'm saying. Most of the children are from the streets, while the rest are from low-income families. But they are extremely hard-working, and we are positive they will do great things in the future.
The founder of this footpath school says she is fighting not just for space, but also against a mindset that often sees girls as moneymakers.
The children who study here are those who are either used for begging or criminal activities, and those who used and abused them do not want them to get educated, as they want to use them as a source of income. Such people try to create hurdles.
Statistics suggest more than 20 million Pakistani children between the ages of 5 and 16 are not in school. But Nafis is determined to beat that statistic.
I want to join the Pakistani army, as not everyone has the good fortune of having the opportunity to make a sacrifice for their country.
Leaders in the nationwide footpath school movement say they have helped enroll more than 200,000 Pakistani children in school, half of them girls. Kevin Enoch, VOA News.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, from healthcare to operating a farm, a Zambian woman's unusual journey. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Well, in today's business report, girls are least likely to be in school in South Sudan, with nearly 3/4 of school-age girls out of the classroom, followed by Central African Republic, Niger, and Afghanistan, all countries hit by conflict, according to the One Campaign. Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino joins us now from New York with the details. Jill?
Hi there. So the index was published ahead of the International Day of the Girl, which actually happens to be today. 9 of the top 10 countries where girls failed to get an education are in Africa, while other crisis-crippled countries, including Somalia and Syria, failed to make the list due to insufficient data. Now, Gail Smith, she's the president of the One Campaign, said that it's a global crisis that perpetuates poverty. In South Sudan, 73% of girls aged 6 to 11 are not in school. In the Central African Republic, there's only 1 teacher for every 80 students. And in Niger, only 17% of girls and women are literate, the report found.
Anybody would want to ask, why is this still happening in 2017?
Well, I did some research on that, and according to the Brookings Institute, taking aside the legacy of colonialism and racial and ethnic inequalities in some of these countries, a number of other factors explain the continuing disparities in learning between rural and urban school children in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, considering the significance of rural poverty across the continent, it should come as no surprise that rural school children are the most disadvantaged from a socioeconomic perspective. When it comes to access to quality education, rural schools generally have less qualified teachers and not enough of teachers for the number of children enrolled in school.
Now, with all these campaigns that have been going on worldwide, our attitudes slowly, even if slowly, really changing towards young girls and education.
Well, the good news is attitudes towards education for girls are starting to change across Africa as more parents see sending their daughters to school not only as a chance to improve their futures, but also to boost the family's fortunes, according to some experts. Now, that the world is more interconnected and technology is slowly making its way into more rural societies, I would hope that this inequality starts to dissipate.
We hope everybody listens. We know that you educate a girl, you educate a village. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Jill. That's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Now, our next story is about a fascinating Zambian woman who is a trained nurse and cardiologist. She quit her medical career in Australia and moved back to Southern Africa to launch Tuzini Farms, a commercial farming company that specializes in growing tomatoes.
When you talk about farming, a lot of people don't take it seriously. But to be honest, there is a lot of money to be made in farming. Being passionate about your work is a major key to being successful. And Malia Zilina Zalumis is no exception.
I love farming. Okay. It's a passion and it's a hobby. And farming is very addictive. I farm every day, including Sunday. I go to church, though.
It was that passion that triggered her to revive her family's half-hectare tomato farm after her father became too sick to continue as its manager.
I came back here and I wasn't satisfied with what I saw in the public hospitals, especially the availability of equipment. Looking after people, as you know, is my job. I also wanted a change in career. So I changed it, and these plants are very similar to my profession, because when I'm looking at plants, I'm looking at people. They need nutrients, they need water, they need food, and finally they make children who are tomato.
With a small amount of savings from her old job as a cardiologist, Maria has now turned her family farm into a commercially viable and profitable business.
I grow according to my market, so I grow for the supermarkets as well as just your normal marketeer. So I always look at the quality of tomato that I'm producing, and I only take off this tomato when it's ripe and it's blood red.
Dubbed as Zambia's tomato queen and the nation's youngest commercial farmer, Zalumis has her sights set on expansion. Today, the Tuzini tomato farm employs over 40 workers and brings in about $800 a day.
Here on the farm, we offer a literacy program for my workers of those who can't read and write, because not everybody has gone to school. So I'm not only reducing their poverty, I'm also empowering them to go and get jobs later on.
Zalumis admits that she doesn't have any formal training or background in farming. She depends on the advice of Remy Mainga, a crop growing expert on what species to grow and how to effectively manage the farm.
I come down to the farm and do the scouting. I go field by field, try to identify the problems. And then when I identify the problem, we sit down with Maria, and then I draw up the spray program. We look at what type of chemicals does she has in stock and what is needed to buy.
Mainga is also a farmer, and he says that Zambian youth should change their mindset about agriculture and go into farming.
To me, I feel that what we just need is empowerment. To empower the youth to go into farming. There is money in farming than waiting to get your salary at the end of the month.
Like any startup company, the Tuzini farm is not without its challenges. For example, price fluctuations, the weather, and getting the tomatoes to the marketplace can be a challenge. But Maria remains confident.
What inspired me was when I came on half a hectare, I saw the potential that the farm could have, and I wanted to invest the money that I came back with in something lucrative. And farming was the way to go, and I enjoy it.
For young people wishing to get into farming, her advice is to be willing to get their hands dirty. Maria's dream is to build the next tomato processing plant so she will be able to export her tomatoes across the region to other African countries and beyond.
Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Tuzini Farm, Chisamba District in Zambia.
Welcome back. Now, while mountains of waste and trash keep piling up in industrialized and developing countries, materials scientists are busy as ever experimenting with new methods for turning those scraps into something useful, from biofuel to food. Viewers, George Puttich looks at some of the latest discoveries.
What do coffee grounds and plastic waste have in common? They are both carbon-based, and therefore they have some energy content, but extracting it in an economical and eco-friendly way is a huge challenge. Researchers at Lancaster University in England say they have found a way to turn coffee grounds, often used as gardening compost, into biodiesel.
Our novel process is in situ transesterification, which actually couples two processes, extraction and reaction, into one single step. So in this case, generally in chemical engineering, when we couple two operations in one single step, we usually get a lower processing cost as well as investment costs.
Even though electric-powered cars are gaining in popularity, experts say diesel engines in trucks, locomotives and ships will be used for foreseeable future, so producing coffee-based diesel would make sense. Even better, Polish scientists say they have found a simpler way to turn mountains of plastic waste into biodiesel.
Everybody knows that polyethylene breaks up into shorter chains when exposed to high temperatures. This is nothing new. The whole difficulty was to heat the plastic, the polyethylene, in such a way as not to burn it in the reactor.
Extracted fuel that complies with European emission standards was tested at the Automotive Industry Institute in Warsaw, and the first production plant is scheduled to open as early as next year. Another waste product, this one rich in proteins, could be turned into animal food. Biotechnologists in Sweden say they have isolated a bacteria that easily turns poultry feathers into edible amino acids.
In this process, we have not used any chemicals except the substrate, which is the raw feather from chicken industry, and then the microorganism. And the end product is only hydrolyzed feather into a protein, soluble protein, and nothing else. There are no waste in this process, and no chemicals at all have been used.
Scientists say animal feed made from feathers may be ready for production by the end of next year. George Puttich, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the rise in singles stamps South Korean officials. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Kenya, police fired tear gas at more than 1,000 opposition supporters marching through the capital, Nairobi, to demand election reforms. We stay in Kenya, where the political crisis caused by disputed elections and weeks of street protest has been particularly bad for Kenyan businesses. Moving on to South Africa, where 4 people die in Durban after severe storm and floods hit the city on South Africa's east coast. In South Sudan, 225 Chinese peacekeepers are given the Peace Medal of Honor awards by the United Nations African Union Mission in Darfur on Tuesday. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Why are South Korean officials worried about the rise of singletons? Well, late in 2016, the number of one-person households totaled nearly 30% of the country's total households. The one-person household trend is feared to continue the country's low fertility rate for South Korean women, already one of the world's lowest at 1.21. That's according to UN figures. The South Korean government is concerned with the single-person household trend for economic reasons. Aging is already a big problem, with people aged 65 years old and above totaling 14% of the national population. Well, next up, for parents raising children in urban environments, the quality of air their little ones breathe can be a big concern. Recent studies have linked infants exposed to higher levels of vehicular air pollution with lung problems later on in life. Enter Breezy Baby, a cushioned headrest for a baby's pushchair with an inbuilt sensors and a fan filter system that cuts the amount of pollution around the child's head. One side of the filter removes fine particles in the air from industrial pollution and traffic. The other filters out harmful gases like nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide. The headrest is currently in development. Well, and finally, these students are meditating for college credit. The course, called Healthy Brains, Healthy Bodies, is part of the University of Vermont's Wellness Environment program. The program started with 120 freshmen last year and has nearly quadrupled in size this semester. Students stay in alcohol and drug-free dorms, and violators get kicked out. Incentives for program participants include free gym membership, nutrition and fitness coaches, and an app that tracks their activities. And that is what is trending today. Now, once a refugee, an Ethiopian immigrant to the United States is now a successful businessman running a multi-million-dollar transportation company. VOA's Tigist Germe recently documented his journey to achieving the American dream.
Growing up in the Oromia region of Ethiopia, Tashta Tufa worked alongside his 13 siblings on the family farm. He had dreams of traveling the world, but never could have imagined the twists and turns his life would take. Today, Tufa runs a company that carries some 15,000 Minnesota students to school every day. The company has a fleet of more than 300 buses and vans and just opened a new terminal on the north side of Minneapolis. Tufa says his upbringing gave him a strong work ethic.
I would say if you are young, make sure that you are washing your mama's dish. Make sure you do that. Make sure that, I think, discipline starts there and then work starts at your mom's kitchen.
Tufa came to the U.S. as a refugee in 1992 due to political reasons. He held down multiple jobs at once to pay the bills while earning a master's degree at the University of Minnesota. After that, he worked as a civil servant, then as a taxi driver. In 2003, he struck out on his own, delivering handwritten letters to public school districts seeking contracts. He started with a single van transporting homeless children. Tufa says he survived by finding people willing to give immigrants a chance.
For me to do business in Minnesota, I had to find people who look like Minnesota to help me work. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily me going out and doing business and giving services. People are comfortable with others other than you who look like them, who speaks like them, who doesn't have an accent. Sometimes you find those ways and please others and continue to do the challenging work.
The business has steadily grown, and in 2012, Tufa was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Metropolitan Economic Development Association. Tufa believes immigrants play an important role in the U.S. economy.
I think the immigrants are the reality is the immigrants do a leftover job also. There are jobs that my daughter doesn't want to do it as a native-born American, but somebody else has to do that job. I think immigrants have contributed to the country in many, many positive ways.
Tufa, a father of 5, says he prioritizes the safety of the children his company serves. Although buses typically drop off kids and leave, MTN pays its drivers to wait until the children get inside their homes or are met by an adult. He also has strived to create a business that operates like a family.
And when I first started, everything I kept hearing was, you want to be more like a family. So what we did was, Carrie and myself, who's a transportation manager, we said we're going to continue that tradition and making it like family.
Tufa believes his story can be an inspiration to new immigrants. With hard work, he said, anything is possible.
Don't be lazy. Take the opportunities you have very seriously. Work hard. Don't expect magic. There's nothing free. Get prepared to work more hours and sacrifice. Sometimes you don't see your family due to your work schedule.
And if you want to be a success, he says, the American dream is alive. For Tigist Gemme, Salam Solomon, VOA News.
Well, now that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. There are many types of games people can play. But what does it mean when you're doing this?
Playing hooky. Hey, I didn't see you in our fitness class today.
Yeah, I was playing hooky. I just didn't feel like going all the way across town for class.
Oh, I see. Well, next time, let me know